What is up, everybody? I am Mumphy. Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new, thank you so much for joining. Today, we're going to be wrapping up the switchpro installation, getting all that inside the truck, and ready to start adding our accessories, that be it lighting or other stuff. So, looking forward to that. Stay tuned, and we'll show you how we're going to install this.
Going crazy.
Alright, so as you can see here, I've got the rest of the kit on this table that we're going to be installing. The only thing that you'll probably have to add in is the control panel. This is from Cali Raised Off-Road. It is a Miso Customs 3D printed switch controller. The 2020s do have all small factory switches, so be sure to look out for those. You don't want one with the tall switch because in the 2020s they don't have them anymore. So we'll be putting all the factory switches down low, and then I'll have the ability to add a switch here to tie in another way. But our switchpro is going to mount right in there. Here's our hardware for that. We won't be using the brackets. We will just be using the screws and the nuts to put that on the switch. We'll be running our switch power wire through the Firewall, and we'll be using some T-taps along with our connections for inside the truck. The other thing you'll need is something to just kind of help crimp those down. The other thing you'll probably need is either a coat hanger to push through the Firewall, or in my case I've got this ridiculously long screwdriver that I'll be using with some electrical tape. We'll just kind of tape this to the screwdriver in order to punch that hole through, because this is kind of a large connection. And then we'll get our power and we'll have everything ready to go. Okay, first things first, let's just go ahead and we'll get our switchpro installed into the switch panel. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the 4 screws. You can see that. We're just going to hand tighten these into the back of the switchpro into the 4 provided holes. And then we'll take our switch panel, we'll run the power through there, and we'll just run all the screws through. Now this is a snug fit for the switchpro, so the nice thing is that we know that it's not going to go anywhere. Then we'll take our nuts, which are a nylock nut, and we'll get those all started on there. And then we'll take an 8mm socket and tighten these down. And we don't want to go too tight on these, just hand tight, because you don't want to break the mount, and these nylock nuts are going to hold. All right, and those are all down and we are solid. Next we'll just undo our wiring harness and we'll tape it up to, in my case I'm going to tape it up to my screwdriver here. I'm going to give myself just a little bit before, so I can puncture through the grommet, and then I can get this through. Alright, so then we'll take our blue wire that's inside and we'll tape that down as well, so we can get all of our wires through the engine bay. Alright, now before we fully commit to running wires down through the Firewall and into the cab, I just want to quickly cover the wiring that we will be utilizing for the rest of this install coming out of the main wire controller on the switchpro. Our power to the interior switch is just right here. We will be running that up through our mount from Derek over at SD Off-Road MT. Great little setup here if you're looking for adding the switchpro to your Tacoma so you can run all your accessories. We've got 3 colored wires here. We've got a blue. Now this blue wire I am going to run into the cab along with the switch control wire. This will tie into our ignition. When we get to that point, I'll show you what we're going to do with that. So I'm going to set this aside. Now we've got our pink and our white wires. The white wire is actually we're going to tie this into our side marker lights in the headlight, and this will give you the backlight on the control switch on the inside of the truck. We'll run that and I'll show you where we tie that into. The pink wire is a trigger wire. We can tie this into our dome light or high beam or reverse lights. The other thing is we may not even need to utilize this to tie into anything. That's from the manual that comes with your SwitchPro. Okay, so where we're going to go through, because it is a little dark in here, you can see that gray tab right behind the little S7 flap there. That's the grommet that we're going to go through to gain access through the firewall into the cab. All right, now we're on the driver's side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start popping off these plastic. All right, when taking this one off, there's actually a little screw cap that you can just pull off. Should release. So you have a pop tap here and a connection here, and then there's a little screw that runs right in there. You'll just pop this cap off. It's kind of just a retention cap, and then you can remove this plastic piece. And now I can show you where I have the screwdriver coming through with all the electrics. So now we're up under here, and there's the screwdriver with our wires poking through. You just want to be sure, don't press too hard when you're going through the grommet firewall, because you don't want to sever any of these wires that are back here. So just medium pressure, I would say, in order to get through that grommet. And now we can take that all off and start working on getting the control switch into the dash. Okay, now you can see I've brought my wires through, so I have enough to run the control switch up to the SwitchPro controller up here. And then this one we're going to tie into our ignition, which is actually going to be back under here. I'll show you that here in a second. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and pop off the plate here. And you can do that with a pry tool. And you can do that fairly easily without having to remove the entire dash. Then we'll just go ahead and disconnect all of the plugs here, which are fairly straightforward, and then we can pop these out and place them into the new one. Now, the cool thing with all of these is that even if you do remove all of these, they are straightforward putting them back. I will pop these out. I'm actually going to pop this blank one out as well, and these are just pinch for the most part. They come right out. This one here is a little bit trickier because you do have a couple of retention tabs on either side that you'll need to depress in order for this light switch to pop out. So go ahead and do that, and we'll come back. All right, so I've popped out our door switch, or our light switch, our rocker switch, and we'll just go ahead and pop that into place. Make sure that those tabs snap in. I am going to put my blank plate right there for now. My auto high beam, snap that in. Go ahead and put the 400 watt, and then our last one, slide right in there. And now we've got a nice factory looking SwitchPro mount ready to go back in. But before we do that, let's go ahead and route our SwitchPro wire up and through. So that way we have all of our connections ready to be plugged back in. And then we can go ahead and snap this back on. Now, this is directional. Mine came with a little indicator for a tab at the end of this one. And on the connection to the actual SwitchPro plate, it's got a little silver marking with a little retention clamp. Those will line up. And now those are in, and we can go ahead and reconnect all of our switches, and then we can start tucking this back in. Alright, It does seem like it is going to be a bit of a tight fit in here. Sorry for the beeping. You will be able to get it in. I may need to pop this back out and trim some of the plastic that's actually behind here. That's one thing that I've kind of found is a little bit of a issue when replacing this on the 2020s. But we've got our switchpro in. I'm actually happy with it. Now we can work on tying in our ignition wire to our ignition, or our factory ignition line. So let's get that going. Okay, next we're going to tie in our blue wire to the ignition wire. And if you come under the kick panel, you'll find a couple of different wire bundles, and we're going to be using this one here. Got a lime green wire in the bottom rightmost section. Now in the 2020s, or at least my 2020, I went ahead and unclipped this. There's only one lime green wire. There's a teal, there's a dark blue. So there's a green, this is lime green, which is the one that we're going to actually tie into. And then there's a blue. You have kind of a teal off to the side and multicolor. So we're going to tie in to that green wire in the 2020s. So I'm going to cut back a little bit of this. We use this clip here to close around the green wire, secure this onto our blue wire, and then this just plugs in to the end there, creating the connection for our ignition. Okay, so as you can see, I've tapped in using the supplied hardware from SwitchPros, and we've got this connection in. I went ahead and crimped our other connection, so this is just going to plug in to the back here to make our connection to the ignition so that it lights up our SwitchPros when the truck comes on and turns, and it'll also turn off when the truck is off. So we'll go ahead and get that plugged in. So now we should have a connection and we can plug this back in. Now I am going to pull more of our panel cord through, power cord through, and just kind of wrap this and tuck it up underneath the kick panel just to keep it tidy, and so that way most of this is actually inside the cabin, not in the engine bay. Alright guys, it's getting a little chilly out here, so I'm just going to throw on my hoodie real quick. We're in the home stretches of getting this thing all hooked up together. What I've done is I've gone ahead and hooked up our interior switch power up to the SwitchPro, so now we're good there. I just I curled some of the wire back behind here, ran it up through the opening where the main wires are coming through in the tray, and just hooked it in. Now we've got to deal with these two wires. Main wire that we got to deal with is going to be our white wire. So this one here we need to splice into our parking lights, so that way when they come on, it'll help dim the lights on the control panel inside, so that way it's not just constantly blinding us. So what we're going to do is I've kind of popped off this panel here. You've got a couple of clips. All you need to do is just pop this straight out and you're able to lift it up. There is a clip back here. I'm not going to worry about removing that for right now. So I'm going to run these wires up under here and down to the headlight. Now, with the 2020s, there's a couple of headlight options. I have the LED headlight option. Now, the setup and connection to this is different than if you have the projection bulbs. The side marker lights, I believe, are an actual bulb. They're not LEDs. Everything in the LED headlights, if that's the setup that you have, is LED, and it's controlled by one plug, basically. I'm going to bring you around and show you the plug that we're going to be utilizing for the LED headlights. Okay, so if you have the LED headlights, this is what you're going to run into. Is down here, this is the plug that basically controls everything. Is going to be that plug right there that the flashlight's on. So we'll just unplug that from the housing, and now there are some wires in the back. I don't know if you can see those or not, but you've got 6 wires coming out of the back here. You've got a brown, a white, a red along the top, and then along the bottom you've got a pink, a green, and then a white with a black stripe. Your parking lights are actually the pink wire on the bottom underneath the brown wire. So we're going to be tapping into that. I'm going to trim this back just a little bit so I can tap into it just like we did on the inside ignition wire. Okay, so as you can see here, did our little tap into our pink wire, and that's going to be our parking light, and then I went ahead and capped off our white wire. So we'll plug into that, and then we'll plug that back in to the headlight plug there, and then we should be good to go. Then we'll just kind of clean up this pink wire and just kind of tuck it back under the plastic, clean this all up, and then put the power back on. Or actually what we'll do is we'll actually put our power. So we'll probably actually tie in here into our fuse, and then we can put our power back on and make sure everything's up and running. Ready for a test. Alright guys, well, it didn't come on, but here's what happened. I did figure it out. So as we walk around, there's one little thing I forgot to do. The switchpro would have worked on the first startup had I tied this power into the battery. It would have worked just fine. But because I ran it through the fuse block, well, the circuit's not complete. The reason is because the breaker did what it's supposed to. It cuts off the power if there's too much draw. Here we go. We'll flip this reset. Hey, we got power to the switchpro now. Now let's go around and check it out. We have lights on the switchpro. So it is up and ready to accept all the accessory lighting that I plan on adding to the truck now. Awesome win. Well guys, that's going to wrap it up for this install. Man, it was time consuming for sure, but you know what? I'm happy that I got it up and running. Man, it's such a relief. I can't tell you how much. It's finally done. Now I can start adding on other accessories. I've got more stuff coming down the line. Stay tuned. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you did, if you feel like I've earned your subscription, please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, hit that like button, share it out there. Hopefully it's helped you guys troubleshoot stuff. I think the biggest change is dealing with these LED headlights for sure. It definitely throws a little bit of a kink because most of the tutorials out there are for the projector headlights and not the LEDs. So that was a very time-consuming fix that I had to find out for myself, but hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of a shortcut if you guys are going with the switchpro setup like mine. And if you're interested, I do have a link in the description box below that actually has all of the mods that I currently have on my Tacoma. If you guys are interested, check it out. It's just a complete list where you can get them if you're interested in picking them up yourself. So thanks again. Thank you for hanging in there. I really appreciate you guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed the journey as well. We'll catch you in the next video. Peace.